All right, we made it to Oak Ridge Backcountry Campsite. We're in Site A. So I pulled out the tent. Looks like a nice tent. Let's go ahead and set it up. First thing I'm going to do is kind of clear any sticks that might look like they could puncture the tent floor. And there's a ground cloth, but we want to do our best to kind of pick up anything that might get in the way. It also doesn't feel well to sleep on sticks and stones. So if you can move those out of the way, that's helpful. That's the rain fly. We have the stakes. Here's the ground cloth. There's the poles. And then what's left in here is the tent body. So the first thing we'll do is we're gonna get the ground cloth out. I'm also going to look overhead and see if there's anything that looks like it might be like a dead limb or anything. You want to look up before you set up any tent. We look pretty good under here. And then what I like to do is, before I set up anything else, I want to kind of lay on it and see if it feels like I'm going to roll down a hill. It feels like I might be rolling this way. So what I'm going to do is kind of reposition it a little bit. To try to balance that feeling out. And to me, that feels a little better. So now we're gonna lay out the tent body. And we have the zipper over on this side and one on this side. So it's a side entry and there's two doors. After we lay that out, I'm going to put the poles together. And I try to lay that off onto the nylon so I don't get a lot of dirt and grime in between each section of the pole. And they kind of snap together almost before you get to them here, but you got to help a few of them. And this particular tent is kind of a central hub for all of these poles to come together in. So you can see the two long poles create a long X. That's what's going to go from corner to corner. This other pole is going to kind of stretch across the top to give it some other, stretch that sidewall out a little bit, but it doesn't go all the way to the ground. These other 4 points are going to go to the ground points. So when I am looking at this pole, I like to put it in the hole closest to the tent. And at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and put the ground cloth connected in. That may come out as we put it together, but I at least try to have them connected. And if they come out, we'll just connect it later. And then this can be the tricky part if it's a one-person setup. We want to keep tension on those corners so they don't pop out. So I'm going to set this one up the same way. And then this is the magic part where it will all come together before I start pushing on that, I want to grab these straps, because you can kind of push the tent away from you if you don't have that grabbed when you're putting that last point up. So now we've got the structure, the skeleton of the tent, and then you'll see there's just these clips that we go around and clip in. And sometimes it may look like you want to clip these before you push these up, and that may work, but I find that it creates some friction, and I like to put the structure of the poles up first. So now we have two more things to connect, and that's this little loop here comes into that piece, and this gives you some more headroom inside the tent. And really, right there, we've created this structure and we are complete. You can see this tent has a lot of ventilation and two doors. And when we put up the rain fly, some people might say it's going to be a beautiful night. I don't need to put up the rain fly. Just be aware of dew. You might want to have the rain fly up. Maybe you go to bed with it rolled up so you can see out the sidewall even more, but you want to be aware of dew and moisture that may come even on a beautiful clear night. So we've got the rain fly and the tents left to go. So at this point you could put in the corners of this tent structure before you put the rain fly on. You can also do it afterwards, but it kind of keeps it in one place. If you're doing it with one person, that can be helpful so it doesn't slide around. So I'm going to catch the tent and the ground cloth together and put that stake in. If you're going to step on that with your shoe, if it's a soft shoe, it can actually puncture a soft running shoe. If it's a solid boot, not as big of a deal. You might be better to get a stick or a rock to push that in. It's nice soft ground right now, but later in the year it'll be harder and you may need to get that rock to pound on it. So I'm going to do that around each corner, but see, if I put it in right here, all that is loose. So I'm going to pull it a little bit taut, but I'm not going to overdo it. If you overdo it, you can really stretch and make the zippers harder to get in and out, and we don't want to put that kind of pressure on the zippers. So I'm going to put it in right there. I'll do that around here to these two. You see my ground cloth came undone, so I'm going to reattach that point. I'm going to pull that a little bit taut. And if I leave this sticking out of the ground too much, they can be a little bit of a trip hazard, so you need to be aware of that. If they're lower in the ground, it's not as big of a deal. But if it's August, it's hard to get them deep into the ground. So now we have the rain fly. It also has a door on each side to match up with the doors over here. Okay, and what you're going to see here is kind of the same system with a loop. I'm going to just put that, you can do it a couple different ways. You could tuck that underneath, but it's really could be done from the top where you could pull that out, but I'm just going to put that on underneath there, and that'll kind of strap around it. And we're just going to go around and attach each one of those. And actually, if you roll it under this way, it makes it a little easier to pull that. We're gonna make this tight after we get each of these corners done. So follow me around here and we'll get to that point here in just a second. And if it was extra windy, stormy, you could stake down this rain fly as well, just in case. But that's usually not necessary. But it does have a loop on the end you could go through. Okay? Before we tighten these, and I actually like to have them loose before we get to this point, we're going to take a stake out from each door. So I'm going to actually make, if you can see that, this is pulled down there. I want everything as loose as possible at first. And I could have done that as I was going around there to be more efficient, but I'm going to make sure those are all loose. And these two already were. So now I'm going to take a stake and there's a couple different things that could happen here. One is, if it's really nice out and you think you want to have this door and create more exposure for kind of just sleeping, you could roll up both sides, and underneath there's a strap here that tucks behind, and that can be done on both sides. And if you do that, obviously you don't need a stake out here at this point because you're just kind of living with this. If it's a beautiful fall evening or whatever and you don't think you're going to need a rain fly completely covering you. But let's assume that it might rain and you want to be a little more protected and not have to go reset up in the middle of the night. Whoops, I zipped it down instead of, there's a double zipper on here where you can zip up from this end or you can zip down from this end. Once again, that gives you a little more options for ventilation. But we're going to keep that zipped all the way right now. We're going to make sure this is zipped all the way down before we stake anything out. So don't get confused and stake down this zipper. There's loops here attached to this zipper, but we want that to be free flow so that you can actually get in and out. So grab onto this other longer piece that has this adjustability to it. And we're gonna put a stake through the end loop. And we're gonna kind of pull taut, but not overly tight, because we're gonna have other adjustments. And we also can pull this to tighten it a little bit. So let's go do that on the other side as well. So once again, these are my zipper loops. This is the one I'm looking for. It actually has kind of a reflectivity built into that. So you can see there's a difference there, and this is where the adjustment's gonna be. So we're gonna kind of pull that down like that, and we can pull that, but we're already pretty tight. And then we're gonna go to this corner adjustment. We're gonna kind of make that nice and taut. And this kind of finishes it off. We have two more opportunities. If you want to have a little more extra ventilation or in a storm, we'll talk about. So generally speaking, you could stop there. There's another point here that there is rope. There's these little ropes here. And I do like using kind of that point for ventilation, especially if it's kind of going to be rainy. You want to kind of open up as much ventilation as you can. So you can take this rope, and some tents may already have this on it. I put a little slip knot on there. And that's going to pull that out to create even more airflow as you maneuver around. So you can do the same thing on the other side, but basically this is the tent set up. I'm going to put this back in the bag because we're not going to use them right now. This piece right here is in case one of the poles breaks. This slides over that broken point and kind of creates some structure. Hopefully you don't need this, but that's what that is for, which will be in the bag. So then these can blow away at night. So we want to package this stuff up again. And I like to put it inside the tent, just tucked in a corner. So let's go see inside the tent. I'm going to go ahead, and since it's during the day, I'm going to go ahead and put this out of the way because it's sunny and nice out. And there's an adjustment on here. You can even tighten that. But when we go into the tent now, it's a nice two-person tent. You can also roll this screening back. And there's a Velcro, actually a magnet. That's a magnet strap that comes around and holds that back so that you can set up your sleeping bag and sleeping pad in the tent. This is a two-person tent, so pretty cozy. Works well as a one-person tent too if you want a little extra room. But you are pretty much ready for the night, and then you can just crawl in and unhook and zip this down from the inside. This is a great place for boots and shoes, hiking poles, stuff that doesn't need to be in the tent but still is out of the rain. So you have, if you may operate where one side is used for stuff and you both might get in from this side, or you can both kind of have your own side. It works either way, but those are the types of things that as you backpack more, you'll get comfortable with, and we hope you enjoy kind of sleeping out in the backcountry.